Legal battles and dance seem incompatible. Legal issues which concern the dance world are not so many, but they are still milestones which change the history and politics of the whole period of our understanding. For example, in the early part of 20th century, due to colonial politics, the patronage systems and the concern from connoisseurs helped change one type of approach to another. For example, the Devadasi was the female attendant or servant of the gods, a girl or woman dedicated to serve the presiding deity of the temple in various ways, not just dance, but music, attending, doing pujas, including cleaning and attending and keeping the temple premises clean. Many performance and dance drama and other worshipping through performing arts took place through ritual dance, music and drama. Though the Devadasi system as an institution came into vogue after 700 ADE, its origin may be traced to girls associated with rituals, performing dance and music in literature, for which we have epigraphical and sculptural evidence from that period. It appears that as the consort deity of the temple, the social status of the Devadasi was originally quite high. She was one of the honorable members of the temple functionaries, and a deep knowledge of the dramatic arts earned respect from connoisseurs of the field for her. But as her position in the temple degenerated, her status in society also degenerated, and she was treated like a temple prostitute. Thus, she was dragged down from an elevated position to the level of a commoner and ordinary courtesan. Several reasons led to this fall, the prime one being a financial issue. During the good times of this system, the Devadasis were employed by the temple and received definite endowments for maintenance. Their financial status was raised and some of them had their personal property. But gradually, with the decline in the popularity and sanctity of the system, generous earnings became rare. The proceeds from the offerings of the devotees gradually became meager, with the result that the food received by them from the bhog of the deity was so much reduced that it was impossible for the numbers of Devadasis to be sustained. Hence, she was forced to seek other means to substantiate her income when not engaged in her legitimate dues. They acted in stage shows, danced and sang in social functions, held in well-to-do households, and the more accomplished were paid highly. So gradually, they turned into temple servants or prostitutes. Thus, either due to financial problem, vulgarity in performance, or loose morals, performing artists gradually lost that respect which they had earned with great difficulty. But the artists appointed in the royal court or those who received royal patronage in some way or the other still held respectable status and were honored for their art. The temples, as we know, were the preserve of classical arts, and the large number of musicians, dancers, poets and kings' courts was a symbol of this status. A king was known by the number of artists which were in his court. With the arrival of colonial powers, the rules of this patronage changed. They mostly had no interest in local culture and had no taste for what we can call today Indian dance, and dubbed all dancing as Nach, equating it with the world of the fallen woman. The word Nach comes from Nach, and in pronunciation it became Nach. And all the women dancing temple or at weddings or at ritual gatherings were called Nach dancers. The royalty was affected, which in turn affected the fortunes of local zamindars or landowners who supported the local temples, and later over a period of time the very climate of indigenous arts changed. While it is easy to blame all ills of India on foreigners who did not contribute to changing tastes and values, one cannot forget the role of some native rulers in trying to emulate Western masters. If ballroom dancing became popular, it must be owing to the local Raja's penchant to emulate or feel one with his masters. When the government of India stopped its grant to the royal courts, The kings could no longer afford to maintain court dancers and musicians, though they were still invited to perform on special occasions. The fall of kingdoms and courts led to decline in patronage and left the artists with no support. What led to the anti-nautch movement was not the dance in the temples, but the performances in private spaces. When the Devadasi had fallen on ill repute, owing to decline in patronage, which had itself suffered at hands of colonial culture, the Devadasis were slowly marginalized and shunned by polite society. Some lawyers and activists took upon themselves to fight for rights to abolish this ancient art system. Such activists and proponents felt that Devadasis were a corrupting influence and its practices should be stopped. Pitted on the opposite side were others who felt there was no need to throw the baby with the bathwater. Thus arose two sides that fought heated legal battles over an art form. The earliest court cases involving Devadasis appear in the 1860s, mostly petty grievances with temple management over the Devadasis' temple land grants and their selection rights regarding new Devadasis. A statement by Bombay's Chief Justice Holloway in 1864 typifies Britain's cautious legal policy of avoiding whenever possible any legislation on matters of Hindu religion that might inflame the Hindu populace. He wrote, "This Devadasi custom is not at variance with Hindu law. Our courts are therefore bound to administer to them that law, uninfluenced by fastidiousness founded upon Western views of morality." Social activists, however, insisted that girls dedicated to temples were inducted into lives of prostitution and demanded the courts ban the practice. The Indian Penal Code, established in 1861, allowed for prostitution but made trafficking illegal. Pressured by an Indian elite who felt embarrassed by a tradition that Westerners had convinced them violated international moral standards, the central government in 1872 requested an official report from each of its provinces on the extent and nature of its Devadasi tradition, as well as the Hindu public's opinion relating thereto. In 1912, legislation to protect female minors aimed at banning the Devadasi system was again introduced by a Parsi and a Hindu, Mr. Mudholkar. Mudholkar presumed neither Hinduism as now practiced nor Hinduism as it was inculcated by rishis recognized this Devadasi system. It was to them a most abhorrent thing. Moral indignation voiced by the male sector of Hindu society was new. Associate Professor of Asian Studies at Mount Holyoke College, Dr. Indra Vishwanatha Peterson, explains this phenomenon. In reaction to the British, Indians acted in two contradictory ways. They became great reformers, but also suppressed some of the more erotic and sexually liberated aspects of women's cultures, thus turning Indian society more rigid and conservative. Devadasis or temple dancers were now considered obscene prostitutes, whereas earlier they were not. This was because Indian men had to prove to the British that they were moral in a Christian Victorian sort of way. In 1929, a Brahmin woman and member of Legislature Assembly, Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, launched a furious anti-nautch or anti-dance campaign demanding wholesale demolition of the Devadasi system. Quoting, "It was a revolting custom calling for immoral trade of women," she raged. The dharmadhikaris or temple heads had general illiterate public imagine that the gods in the temple want these dasis for service, she added. "The gods in the temple do not want any dance or music," thundered Sri K.R. Karant, a Hindu. "It is sacrilege to say that religion requires all this nonsense." Throughout the 60 years of legal assault against them, the Devadasis, as per their dignity, remained silent. But Dr. Reddy scared them out of that shy profile. The reason was interesting. Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy's mother herself was a Devadasi, and she wanted to change the system once she was legally empowered and also in the assembly with some political authorities. So pleas and protests, letters to the editors were personally signed and sent to the Madras legislature. One letter stood out. It was signed by the deputation of the Devdasis of the Presidency of Madras and the Devdasi Association of the Tinuveli district. In eloquent language, they pleaded for their survival. They denied being harlots or women of ill repute and lamented this cruel stigma attached to them. They confessed a minor degree of going off the course from temple worship had crept into their society and sincerely invited that such women be dealt with in accordance with the existing laws. They maintained our institution is similar to the mutts presided by sannyasis for the propagation of a sect or religion. We can be compared to female sannyasins who are attached to respective temples. We marry none but God and become devotees of God. They averred Dr. Reddy's proposed abolition of the tradition punished the many for actions of a few, and painfully assessed in proposing this legislation, the legislators attempt to do away forever with our sect. Such legislation is unparalleled in the civilized world. They asked for more soulful training, give us education, religious, literary and artistic, so we will occupy once again the same rank which we held in the past. Teach us the Tevarams of the Saivite saints and the Nalayaram of the Vaishnavite Acharyas. Instill into us the Gita and the beauty of the Ramayana, and explain to us the Agamas and the rites of worship. This would, they argued, inspire Devdasi girls to model themselves after female saints like Maitri, Gargi, Mani Mekalai, and the women singers of the Vedas, that we might once again become the preachers of morality and religion. You who boast of your tender love for small communities, we pray that you may allow us to live and work out our salvation and manifest ourselves in the jnana and bhakti and keep alight the torch of India's religion amidst the fog and storms of increasing materialism and interpret the message of India to the world. The anti-Notch supporters, largely educated professionals and Hindus, began their attack on the Devdasis' dance in 1892 using the declamatory and journalistic skills at their disposal to full effect. Collective public action took the form of signature protests and marches to the homes of the elite who refused to heed the call for boycotting the dance at private celebrations. The vigor of the anti-Notch campaign led to the complete suppression of Sadeh and its secular performance much before the formal legislation was enacted against temple dedication in 1947. The reformist or abolitionists movement was supported by some journals and newspapers like the Indian Social Reformer and Labour Party Servant. That movement initially concentrated on building public opinion and to enlist members to refuse to attend Notch parties as well as to refuse to invite Devdasis to festivities at their homes. It was around 1899 that the anti-Notch and purity movement turned its attention to stopping dedications. The anti-Notch movement paved the way for anti-dedication movement. On one side were new intellectuals and activists like Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, who wished to cleanse the system. On the other spectrum was lawyer activist E. Krishna Iyer, a concerned dance devotee who loved dance and thus took up cudgels on their behalf. Both fought in various ways like organizing shows, talking about it all on public occasions, and writing feisty letters to the editors and articles in press. In an article titled Indian Dance Galore, E. Krishna Iyer wrote in Indian Republic dated October 21, 1947, that if the national heritage, which had been preserved and developed for over 2000 years, fell into disrepute and neglect for a time in the past, it was partly due to the inferiority complex of our so called educated countrymen steeped in Western culture and glamour of everything alien. The main legal issue was continuation or not of the Devadasi tradition. While E. Krishna Iyer and others felt the tradition itself was not bad, Reddy and Lott held that the root cause was the practice itself. E. Krishna Iyer and his band of lawyers activists were further supported by other national artists indirectly who, by just talking and taking to dance and publicly performing like Ram Gopal, Uday Shankar, Gopinath Tankamani, Madam Menaka, Rukmini Devi Arundel, made an important statement that dance wasn't bad, but maybe the Devadasi system needed cleaning. E. Krishna himself occasionally dressed up as a girl to show dance was beyond gender, stigma, or system. He wanted to prove that dance art was not confined to women of ill repute. When the Madras Music Academy, a bastion of Brahminical arts, shunned Devadasi for performing there, E. Krishna Iyer showcased Bharatanatyam by Devadasis, Rajalakshmi and Jeevaratnam, Kalyani sisters on March 15, 1931 and Balasaraswati on 26 August 1933 when she was still a teenager. She later retorted famously through dance with Yarukulam Bhayama. As its founding secretary, E. Krishna Iyer had no qualms about using his position. His skirmishes with the establishment were intense, but that did not deter him in the least. He also had the power of the pen. The Maharaja of Bobili, who was then also the governor of Madras Presidency, further enhanced the battle by presenting twin sisters Varalakshmi and Bhanumati at his investiture ceremony, though at the same time decreeing if girls from good families take to dance, thus opening floodgates of demands for banning the Devadasis. Muthulakshmi Reddy shot off angry letters to the Hindu and the Mail criticizing him for associating himself with the Nach party. Her ire was laced with the pain because on the committee of hosts for the celebration were some of her friends who had given their unqualified support to her goals. Even if they had not known that Nach was to be presented, they had not protested or walked out. Dr. Reddy was upset too that Nach was performed at another public function, a garden party given in honor of M.A. Muttaya Chettiar, Kumara Raj of Chettinad. The letters published in the Hindu drew response from E. Krishna Iyer, and the issue blossomed into a full-fledged controversy. Krishna Iyer was not against the right kind of reforms. He agreed that dance should not be used to lure clients for immoral purposes, but he wanted the art to be preserved. He noted that 50 years of anti-Nach movement had nearly killed the art, even while failing to eradicate immorality. In the ensuing debate in the press, few support Dr. Reddy, while many sided with E. Krishna Iyer. Those who wished to save Sadir from extinction came to be identified as pro-art. At the same time, fight for India's independence was on, and thus there was a nationalistic fervor, and the whole environment was charged with energy for newness. Sometimes such invisible trends in society and its evolution also contribute to such causes. From political platforms, dancers and musicians sang about their art. At large Congress-led gatherings, many leaders like Rajaji, Sarojini Naidu, and Gandhi extolled the beauty of Indian arts and traditions. This helped the cause of arts and artists too. M.S. Subbulakshmi, another talent hailing from the Devadasi tradition, sang at such platforms, and dancers like Mailapur Gauri Ammar and Nagaratnamal danced. In the end, Muthulakshmi Reddy fought hard and just as India became independent, The Devadasi Act was passed and a whole tradition was banned. That Bharatanatyam has survived and how shows the strength of the form. Muthulakshmi Reddy died soon thereafter. In Adyar, a road today stands named after her for her failing efforts. E. Krishna Iyer and others continued to serve Bharatanatyam and wrote, spoke, lectured about its content, thus enabling many young girls from good families to take to art like Rukmini Devi Arundel, Kamla Lakshman, M.K. Saroja, Vajayanti Mala. The rest, as they say, is history.